It's a clash of titans on Saturday night in Austin, Texas, as the Longhorns and Bulldogs do battle. We're here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game between Texas and Georgia. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips. He's Dave Shumate. He is Cole Thompson. We are here talking all things Texas and Georgia. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us across all social media platforms as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. This segment brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com. Use promo code SECU at sign up to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 or more lineup. Again, that's prizepicks.com. Promo code SECU to get your $50 bonus today. A game we've been counting down the seconds to for the last couple months is finally here. Texas and Georgia set to square off in Austin, Texas. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game. I am Chris Phillips. Helping me do so, my good friends Dave Shumate and Cole Thompson. Join me once again. Boys, what's going on? Appreciate you taking the time and super excited to break down this game with you.
Yeah, we had the first big matchup, I feel like, in the SEC for Texas. I mean, obviously you had the Oklahoma one last week, but against a team that's been in the league, you bring in both Oklahoma and Texas in, feels a little different. This feels like it's the first real SEC matchup against, heading into the season, and I could still say right now, probably the premier program in the league, the kind of top dog heading into the season. Georgia now, they've had some flaws, but again, got to be fired up. College Game Day will be there. Our guy Chris Phillips will be there. Probably, again, everybody and their grandma will be at this game. Formula One racing's in town this week. You're going to get into, Bergstrom Engstrom Airport in Austin. It'll be interesting getting in and out of there for Ubers this week, CP.
Well, correction, Dave. I hate to let down the fine Texas and Georgia folks, but I will actually be in Knoxville, Tennessee. The exact reason I won't be there, you mentioned, is F1. So I was actually advised by our friends there in Austin, Texas, that, it's going to be a madhouse in the city. So I will not be there for this one, but I will be there in spirit, Dave. Good on you. Good on you.
Hate to break it to you, boys, but that F1 race is going to be the second most important races we see, as the winner of this game is shooting up the board and they are off to the races when it comes to representing the conference in the college football playoff. I hate to break it to you, but the winner of this game does feel like that they're going to be hoisting up another trophy down in Atlanta, Georgia come early December, so long as they don't shoot themselves in the foot. And yes, both of these teams belong in that type of conversation. I don't want to hear it from the SEC folks who are saying, but it's Texas. Who have they played against? And I don't want to hear from the Texas folks saying Georgia's looked rusty. It still is the brand. It still is the persona. It still is the organization that bleeds the red and black. The winner of this game, that's your favorite to go ahead and probably win a national title too.
I would say certainly at minimum, Cole, to your point, puts you in the driver's seat for the SEC championship. And again, that SEC supremacy, top dog, no pun intended, in the conference. Again, it's a 6:30 kickoff Central Time on Saturday night on ABC in Austin, Texas at Darrell K. Royal Texas Memorial Stadium. Guys, from the Vegas perspective, this one is really interesting. Georgia opened up as a 1.5-point favorite. The line currently, as we speak on this game and preview this game on Monday afternoon, Texas is a 3.5-point favorite. The over-under is set at 56.5 points. Texas leads the all-time series 4-1. The last meeting, guys, 2019 down in New Orleans. Texas won this game 28-21. If I do recall, that was the We're Back game.
This is the Sam Ehlinger game.
Yes. So that's the last
That was Bevo getting after Uga.
That's Bevo getting after Uga. Yeah. That's Sam Ehlinger saying the most horrifying words in the history of Longhorn football. And it was the moment to where things didn't start going well for Tom Herman, but ultimately led you to where you are today.
Indeed. So a classic the last time these two teams met, with tons of memories. I can only expect more of the same. And guys, as we dive into the matchup, again, I don't have to spend a whole lot of time hyping this one up. It's a clash of titans, a battle for SEC supremacy. Again, Dave, I understand why you thought I would be there, because this is the premier game. It feels like at least one of them. The game we're going to down in Knoxville is not going to be too bad either. But this is one we've been looking forward to, guys. When you looked at every single SEC game of the year list over the summer, this one may have not been number one, but it was at lowest 2 or 3. It was debated.
It was this one, or what would you say, Oregon, Ohio State last week.
Yeah, I think Bama, Georgia was also looked at as like game of the year type of status. But this one, I mean, if it wasn't 1A, it was 1B right there behind it, because this is the moment. Again, as good as they've been all year, this is the moment it feels like Texas takes center stage. Georgia obviously has got some things to shore up, and certainly they want to go in there and prove, they are still, or they feel like they are the team to beat in the SEC, even though they lost early in the season to Alabama. You think about what Georgia's got ahead of them. Winning this game is pivotal for their college football playoff hopes. I mean, the fact we're talking about Georgia's potentially being on the verge of missing the playoff, but it's a very real thing when you look at their schedule and what they've got upcoming. So, guys, everything on the field, we're going to get into that's really exciting, but the overall just intangibles and the build up to this game, I mean, it's one of the things you just love about college football, man. This game is on center stage as it should be. As well, it belongs there. And more importantly, it belongs there because of there are so many different storylines. How about the one that's more underlying? Texas joins the SEC. They don't look like they're missing a beat. And who's running the show? A Nick Saban disciple. Who's running the show on the opposing sidelines walking on in? A Nick Saban disciple. We planned the Georgia-Ole Miss game, and we have for a while, about how that is now the matchup between two Saban disciples to finally get kind of the wool over someone else's eyes. This may be one where it's the turning of the tides, where once again, Nick Saban retires, but it's actually Georgia still being the bridesmaid, and Texas is the new pretty bride taking on over in the conference where it just means more.
Yeah, I mean, across the board here. I mean, Texas, I think we've, again, in this transfer portal era, lack of coaching continuity, people being all over this. It's good to see. And again, these are the top dogs. So, I mean, they're not really recruiting kids. They're drafting kids. They're one of the handful of teams in the country, both of them, that can go draft instead of recruit. They're not having to go set their boards. Like, hypothetically, just come to head. Like in Arkansas, it has to go wait to see what the big dogs take. And they take. And to give credit to both these staffs, they've built their line of scrimmages for the most part, except give or take Texas on the interior, a few depth guys, from homegrown talent, from homegrown, like a Green Bay Packer, a Wolf kind of thing standpoint, where like, hey, like that's how you win championships on both sides of the line of scrimmage. All those guys, except a few depth guys, have been recruited and have stayed at the University of Georgia, have stayed at the University of Texas on both sides of the line of scrimmage. We get to see that, and that's where development takes place. Again, we see a lot of – you go back and watch Tennessee, both their tackles are transfers. Like, it's all over the place. You see a couple of other teams like that. They're all over the place. Continuity. You do see two units on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Yeah, and Georgia has some stuff to improve on the defensive line. Michael Williams getting healthy for one. But across the board, these are the two top dogs that draft every year. They don't recruit, but they're both really good across the line of scrimmage.
And to your point, Dave, I go directly to that matchup in the line of scrimmage. I mean, this is a game that's going to be won in the trenches. We saw Texas earlier this season, so I'm not questioning their physicality by any means. We saw them go into Ann Arbor and just win a fist fight straight up. And I think that was the question we had. Are they able to do it? This is the first SEC test. And I think, too, you look at the Oklahoma game, throttled the Sooners. You give them a lot of credit for what they were able to do. But I'm so excited to watch that battle initially in the trenches on both sides. This is where respect is earned, not given. I think Texas can earn a lot of respect from their SEC counterparts if you're able to go out there and not just hold your own with a team like Georgia. I don't care if this isn't Georgia's best team in so-and-so years, and you go out there and whoop up on that G. I think that's going to hit different than anything they've done to this point this year.
No, 100%. I mean, for Texas, I mean, we talk about you win this game. It's essentially, I don't know if you're penciling yourself into the national championship game yet, because you don't know who your opponents are in the playoffs. But, I mean, you're in the playoffs, I feel like. And I even feel like this early out, that's a stretch for a lot of teams. But Georgia wins – I mean, Texas wins this game. Who they still got? Vanderbilt, obviously, you got that next week. It's a game you can't sleep on. Vanderbilt's definitely an improved team, as we all know. You got Kentucky. You got Florida. You still got the matchup against A&M. Who they play? UTEP, I think, or somebody like that. The second to last game, or 3 weeks out before the last game up against A&M. I think we'd all have a hard time seeing Texas lose 3 games. This is a playoff puncher. I don't know if I'm ready to say that for Georgia yet. You'd feel good if they win, but Georgia's still got some games that you could be like, I mean, yeah, Tennessee on a given day, yeah, Ole Miss on a given day. Texas, you look at the schedule and you're like, I mean, dude, unless they just have some epic injury run or something, there's no way they lose 3 games. You hate saying that today's college football and the 2024 season, something we hadn't seen since the 2007 season, and that's honestly starting to make that season look a little bit like a joke. But, I mean, I don't see 3 losses. I could be wrong, but if Texas wins this, you could almost punch themselves into the playoffs, very least.
It's a playoff ticket puncher, I think, for the Longhorns, to say the least, would be the best way to put it. Chris brought up a really interesting point, how this is a game where now it's SEC versus SEC. And yes, you talk about Michigan. They far from reached their expectations coming off of winning a national title. But don't kid yourself for one moment and think that their defensive line, featuring Josiah Stewart, Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, for my money, the best defensive tackle in the country, was being sluggish that afternoon. They came into that fight thinking, hey, we're going to be the aggressor. We're going to be the bully. We're going to be the force that forces a guy like Quinn Ewers to have to step up. And all they did was they ran for over 150 yards. They were able to have consistency on the ground. They were able to pile drive it on into the end zone without their star running back, CJ Baxter. And it's because they had the offensive line. Last week in the Red River Shootout, this was a game that I thought, if Oklahoma can control the tempo, if Oklahoma can force Quinn Ewers in his first game back, knock it off a little bit of rust, they would be able to make this thing interesting. And Quinn looked awful at times. Quinn showed you that, yes, missing a month of football was really, really challenging. And then you see that the fact that Texas has a second punch, and they kind of just sit back and they go to the sidelines and they smile and go, you know what, 3? Sit this one out. We got it. They averaged 5.9 yards per play on the ground against a very solid Oklahoma front seven, against an Oklahoma defense that, take no credit away from them, they played pretty lights out in the first quarter, and then things just started to go south because they found a second gear on Texas's offense. Georgia's got a good defensive front. Maybe it's not at the same level as Michigan. Maybe it's not the same level as Oklahoma. But what are we going to say after this game if the same results occur down in Austin and it still is averaging over 5 yards per play, and it's setting yourself up for second and manageable, and now you have a healthy Quinn Ewers, which, by the way, you didn't have Jarrett Gibson in this game at full capacity. You were relying heavily on Trey Wisner. You were relying heavily on Ryan Wingo to get that 25-yard gain. Now you have your running backs at full speed. You have your quarterback back, and the offensive line that has been probably, for my money, the most consistent in college football this year. What do we say for the rest of the season? The reason it's a playoff ticket puncher for Texas is because of, as long as they don't lose a single starting 5 in their trenches, they will have faced off against 3 of the best defensive front sevens in college football, and they made it look easy, especially if they do what they did against in Dallas when they come back home.
Yeah, to your point, Cole, again, Texas being the bullies is something that's got to bring a smile to your face if you're a Longhorns fan. And certainly when you look at the struggles Georgia's had defensively, I mean, I think, too, a money game for both these quarterbacks, Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck. Obviously, again, I was in the building a couple weeks ago when Carson Beck struggled as badly as you'll see any big-time quarterback struggle in that first half against Alabama. He stepped up in the second half. Guys, he's got to be better start to finish. I mean, if you're Georgia, they've got to be able to positively get out of the gate. You can't let Texas obviously race out to a big league on the home field. Again, we've seen Georgia come back. It's certainly not possible, but not a great recipe to win a game. But I go back to the quarterback position, not to oversimplify here, but this is a big-time money game for both sides. We had the conversation before the season. Both these quarterbacks going to have the opportunity to solidify themselves as the best player at their position in 2024, one of the best prospects going into an NFL draft. It's a game like this that sort of defines your legacy. Both Quinn Ewers and Carson Beck, I think, have that on the line on Saturday night.
Do we feel like this is a game Carson Beck kind of has to have this, in my opinion? Maybe it's just me from an evaluation standpoint. The guy hasn't won a big game. Yeah. I mean, some people may, all right, you beat Florida in a rivalry game in Jacksonville last year. You beat Tennessee in Knoxville against an 8-4 Tennessee team. I mean, he hasn't
won a
Orange Bowl doesn't count.
Yeah, he hasn't won a big game, Dave, where I feel like we leave that big game and he is the talking point. Like he is the reason they won that big game. Maybe that's unfair, but
I think it's fair. Yeah, I think it's true. Hell, he may even admit that. What big game? Again, he played well in the second half against Alabama, but now you're starting to see, again, it was that Alabama tough environment, deep hole you were in, but we're starting to see this Alabama defense has major holes too. This is the game where you're like, again, I don't know if you have to go win it because that's just a little unfair.
I think he needs to win it.
Texas, who's arguably the best team in the country right now, on the road. It's a little unfair. He, at the very least, like you were saying, Chris, can't be the reason when we're looking back on Saturday night doing Sunday Fun Day and we're like, Carson Beck just didn't get it done.
I'll make this short and sweet, and I'm going to ask both you guys. If you had to look right now at Texas's wide receiver core or Georgia's wide receiver core, which one are you taking? Just one word. Which one?
Texas. I mean, Georgia hadn't been great at the wide receiver group.
That is why Carson Beck has to win this game. because of Quinn Ewers can trust any one of his pick his poison type of pass catchers and be fine. You want to go win over the top of Silas Bolden? Great, we're going to do it. You want to be able to have a guy like Ryan Wingo run a couple of jet sweeps and get 45 yards? Cool, we'll do it. You want to be able to see if an Isaiah Bond can be healthy for this game, which his status is going to be really beneficial to Texas's overall success. They can do it. You got Gunnar Helm involved. You also have great plays out of the backfield with Trey Wisner, with Jaden Blue. You feel good about where you are with the matchup performances, and also somebody is going to be that dude. Matthew Golden. You can also throw in probably Jonte Cook. Any one of these guys. You don't have that right now down in Athens. You don't. And so when you look at Texas, Quinn Ewers can have an errant pass and it probably end up hitting the ground. And he'll make up for it a few plays later where he'll find a 30-yard gain to Ryan Wingo and set yourself up for at least a Bird Auburn field goal attempt. Carson Beck has to win this game because Carson Beck, as much as he was able to nearly pull off the greatest comeback in SEC history, put Georgia in the place to where they had to get that comeback to begin with. Carson Beck looked phenomenal with over 400 passing yards against Mississippi State, yet his 2 interceptions made this a 10-point swing against a Mississippi State team that lost to Toledo, which, by the way, lost to Buffalo. So when we talk about where Carson Beck has to kind of deliver, this is the game. Because if it will be against a top 10 defense, it will be against an overall physical front seven. It will be against a secondary that consistently has been making plays. They've allowed 3 touchdowns all year. And might I remind both of you, gentlemen, 2 of those touchdowns came in the fourth quarter when really the game was out of reach against Michigan and against Mississippi State. UTSA is the only team this year to score a touchdown before halftime against Texas. This is a game where Carson Beck has to show why he was considered the #1 quarterback prospect coming into the year. This is a game where Carson Beck has to show why he is the reason why we can believe in Georgia as a program that can win a national title. And yes, it is not a one-man wrecking crew. But at the end of the day, when we look at that score, how close it will be, how the stats are, how things will pan out, all resides on the shoulders of number 15 down in Athens, Georgia.
I mean, I think the real matchup, because the receivers don't play against each other. Like Georgia's receivers obviously aren't going against Texas receivers. You got to look at the matchups across the ball. Like whose secondary do you feel better about right now? I would say Texas is. Georgia's got major balls on the back end of that.
Yeah. I after giving up 300 passing yards to Mississippi State, I would definitely say I feel better about Texas secondary. Guys, that's the point I wanted to get to next too. And really quickly, to Cole's point, Texas had 9 different ball catchers bringing a pass on Saturday against Oklahoma. So, I mean, they're as deep as anybody at that position. And we know about the top end guys and Ryan Wingo and Matthew Golden and Isaiah Bond and Silas Bolden. The list just goes on and on. What's the level of concern or the panic level right now with Georgia's defense? Because I got to be honest, guys, like even just looking at the stat sheet, I didn't catch every single snap of Georgia, Mississippi State. Looking at the stat sheet, it's like, I just almost can't believe what I'm looking at. I mean, this feels so off-brand. And I mean, saw it in person a few weeks ago. Again, what Alabama did in that first half. You made adjustments, but I mean, it just this feels so off-brand for what we're used to from Georgia on the defensive side.
The run defense is nothing.
Outside of Malachi Starks, no one else has really played great this year. I mean, I feel like every week you see teams go and pick on our guy, Jonel Aguero. It's every week at that nickel spot. You feel somebody's going to go pick on him. And you can obviously, it's not just me watching the film. You see Hugh Freeze did it the week before, see Jeff Levy and them do it the next week. That kid's showing up on film where people are seeing tendencies that are like, yeah, we can go attack the nickel.
And if they're seeing it, Steve Sarkisian's definitely seeing it.
And then, yeah, you got Sark with the deep crossers, the Seattle routes. Yeah. There's major holes back there. Then also, too, they put a lot on the freshmen back there to make a lot of calls. KJ Bolden, this will be the first test. I mean, again, there's no denying. Georgia's played the tougher schedule out of the two. They've been tested. Clemson and Alabama. I don't think anybody's denying. I think the guy who wears the biggest orange glasses or burnt orange glasses in the world would probably admit that. But there's a lot of holes on this secondary right now. I mean, think about it. Michael Van Buren, who I'm fired up about, quarterback from Mississippi State, he was just a true freshman and went in, and they had a lot of success. There's a lot of issues on that front. And then also, there's no pass rush being generated right now for Georgia. I mean, Damon Wilson's the only guy. Michael Williams since he got hurt against Clemson, has just not been right. Chaz Chambliss, he's more of an edge setter. He's not really going to go win one-on-one battles and go affect the quarterback all by himself. Georgia's having to bring pressure. That's putting their secondary in an island against a secondary. It's probably not ready to be on an island outside Malachi Starks, and he didn't even play great this past week.
Guys, Georgia is 15th out of 16th in the SEC in sacks. They have 11 sacks on the year. Their defensive front has done really well playing against the run at times. And so I think when you look at Texas' offensive line, they can create open avenues. But if CJ Baxter was playing in this game, maybe you'd feel a little bit more confident. I think that you like Jarrett Gibson, but again, what is his status going to be at full capacity after him barely playing in Red River? You like Trey Wisner, but again, he had that big fumble. We know the fumble issues that can happen with Jaden Blue. The inability to get to Quinn Ewers, now having a full week to recover, and also knowing that this team can win through the air, that's the horrifying part. Because if you are putting so much pressure on Georgia's cornerbacks, a young playmaker in KJ Bolden, and really Malachi Starks to have to be a human chess piece that moves throughout the entire game. There's never going to be a matchup where Stark will just line up against Gunnar Helm, where he'll just light up against a slot receiver, where he'll just be able to play over the top. You can't do that because of when you look at what Texas has in its arsenal. 9 pass catchers last week at least caught 1 ball, and there's at least a dozen on this squad that can beat you at any given moment. That, to me, is what really stands out. To generate a pass rush, that gives your secondary a little bit of breathing room. If you can't get to the quarterback, and right now nobody has been able to get to Quinn Ewers consistently. Nobody. And Georgia hasn't been able to get to anybody consistently either. That's a reason for concern. And the reason that there is for concern is because if you still have 2 more games circled on the schedule where you're on paper a better roster than Tennessee. You're on paper a better roster than Ole Miss. But Ole Miss has a defense. Tennessee has a defense. If your offense can't capitalize and put up massive points, they're going to be shootouts, they're going to be dogfights down to the wire where you're going to trust your kicker to have to be the one to deliver. And it really does feel that way. That's why I feel like that if you're Georgia, this is a game where you need to see your defense step up. You need to see Carson Beck step up. But if I had to pick one or the other, I really would rather have the defense step up because at least I know I can move the football with Nate Frazier, whichever ETN. If I can't generate any pass rush, I'm getting concerned. I'm getting extremely concerned.
No, maybe Sark may go back and look at that. I mean, if I'm him, I'm looking at this. Does he go look back at that Alabama film in the first half where Alabama was having a ton of success on the edge? Because Alabama, when they tried to go interior, which I think they tricked Georgia, they zigged and Georgia thought they were going to zag. I think Georgia thought they were going to come run right at them, Alabama, because they were banged up. When Bama did try to, I think, kind of start speeding up the game and trying to get the game over with when they had the lead, they had no success. It'd be interesting to see if they think they can kind of go out leverage, out hat Georgia. And then when you get them moving sideways, that opens up the middle of the game right there. And Sark's probably salivating out of his mouth at that point. If we can play action, Quinn pulls it. That's when Cole's guy, Helm, comes in right there, wide open over the middle field. And Georgia's linebackers, similar to Alabama's right now, C.J. Allen, Small Munden, Raylan Wilson, their lack of eye discipline is getting them in trouble as well. I mean, Georgia's got issues on the – I mean, it's all relative. I mean, we're all saying the same thing. It's not like Georgia's the worst defense in the country. We're not talking about 2023 LSU defense here. But for their own standard, they have issues.
For their standard, it's awful. By the way, Chris, do you know the answer to this? Is Tate Ratledge expected to play or is he still out?
No, he's supposed to be back for Florida. And also, you got to think, too, Branton Robinson went out for Georgia. They only have 3 scholarship running backs available this week. Cass Jones, walk-on, about to get some reps. They don't trust Nate Frazier in pass pro either, so that's a little scary.
I was going to say what's fascinating, guys, about this matchup is the way we're talking about it now, how much differently it is from weeks ago or certainly months ago, is that, because all offseason, especially when Baxter went down, you had the injuries at running back, is Texas going to be able to 3rd and short, 4th and short? Are they going to be able to get the tough yardage and hang with Georgia in the trenches? And now I'm sitting here wondering, is Georgia going to be able to hang with Texas in the trenches? Like, are they going to get pushed around? Like, you mentioned 15th out of 16 in sacks, and this ain't the week to find that. You know what I mean? Like, Texas is one of the best offensive lines in the country. So I don't know, man. The scope of this game, obviously it changes. Obviously the point that we're at in the season, we're learning more and more about these teams, and we're starting to you kind of are what you are. But I would have never guessed we'd be talking about it this way, where I'm like, man, it might be Georgia getting bullied instead of Texas. But then again, dogs very well may rise to the occasion. So that level of physicality. It's going to be something to watch for sure. Again, does Georgia's defense bounce back? Guys, I had that written in my notes. It's just after that game against Mississippi State, which is kind of a wonky game, but you know, there's just so many things I think Georgia's got to be able to do better. Guys, I'll direct to this key players for you. Again, in a game like this, there's so many big-time NFL bodies. Is there a guy you look at that's got to have a standout game on one side or the other that you think could dictate this one?
For Georgia, for me, injury-wise, I mean, Cole asked about Tate Ratledge. I think he's coming back for the Florida game. But for me, is the center Jared Wilson play, because Drew Bobo, offensive coordinator Mike Bobo's sons, had to play against Mississippi State, played a couple reps against Alabama when Wilson went out. I mean, again, going back to attrition, you really want Drew Bobo going into DKR, not in his first start, obviously, but in his first like real road game in that environment. You're kind of on your 2.5 third string center, because remember, Tate Ratledge moves over to that if he's healthy in a perfect world. So he's technically your backup. You got Drew Bobo as your third string. I mean, Pete Kotowski's probably like, I'll take the third string center coming into our house. So my player to watch is Jared Wilson, and if he's not able to go, it's Drew Bobo.
I think for Georgia, someone's got to step up as that other receiver outside of Arian Smith. Somebody. Oscar Delp has done nothing this year. It's been really, really surprising that he has 5 catches for 53 yards. And I don't think that there is a weakness at the linebacker spot for Texas, because it's not. Ant Hill is a stud in the heat-seeking missile, and David Benda's done a great job taking on over for Jalen Ford. But can you attack the middle of the field? Can you get, whether that be a Dylan Bell or whether that be an Oscar Delp, to find a way to meet that open crease to where there is that separation between the linebackers and the safeties, to where you throw it in the breadbasket to gain a 9, gain a 10, pick up a first down, re-hit the sticks? That's going to be really interesting to see. I think Ben Urasic, the tight end transfer from Stanford, maybe ends up having a big-time game because of that mismatch that you can create. For Texas, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, as much as I know the wide receiver position is potentially going to be without Isaiah Bond, I like their depth. I want to see what Trey Moore can do defensively, because they brought in the AAC Defensive Player of the Year to become just a wrecking force opposite of Ethan Burke. They believe that this is a team that can have multiple star pass rushers. But when you look back at that game against Oklahoma, Colin Simmons looked the part of a can't-miss, upside, generational type of pass rusher that will be on this team for years to come. 1.5 sacks, 3.5 tackles for losses. He had a game to remember in his, 1.5 tackles for losses, no sacks in this game. He had a game to remember. I want to see that from Trey Moore, because if you brought in the veteran to be the dude who is not afraid of winning his matchups and dominate against inferior competition, I feel like that if you have him, again, it's a rotation of just consistent consistent pass rushers that puts you in a blender of concern, and you're never going to be able to capitalize.
So, guys, as we lock in our predictions for this one, let's do so. Texas and Georgia at DKR in Austin. Cole, let's start with you, and then we'll go to Dave, and then I'll finish this thing off. We'll go across the board here. Texas and Georgia, clash of titans. Who comes out on top?
Georgia is the standard of college football still. I mean that they are. And it takes, maybe they're not the only one, but Georgia is the standard, along with Alabama, along with what we consider Ohio State. And we've been waiting to see Texas kind of return to this element. The one that was sustainable in the Big 12, the one that won national titles, the one that was competitive in routes to going to Big 12 championships. Texas right now looks like the most complete team in the sport. Texas right now looks like the team that when people say who is number one, your first answer should be, no, how big is the difference between Texas and the number 2 roster in the AP poll? Because if yes, we can say that a team like Oregon has the massive win. We can talk about the extremities to where Alabama beat up on Georgia, and that's just one of the program-defining moments underneath Kalen DeBoer. But when I'm looking for consistency, the same motion, doesn't matter who is the quarterback, the starting offensive lineman, who are the wide receivers, who is my defensive coordinator, who's getting a turnover. Those on the 40 acres see it. And I have no doubt about Texas. I don't have any doubt about Georgia because it's Kirby Smart. It is. But guys, Texas I'm done saying that they're back. We need to retire the phrase and leave it in the Big 12. Texas is not back. Texas is here, is the new term in the SEC. They're here. They mean business. And the rest of the conference, those 15 other teams are going to have to accept the fact that this program is going to be part of the standard of what defines the SEC. I got Texas winning this one. I got Texas coming out big in this game. I have the Longhorns securing a 10-point victory at home, firmly planning their storyline and punching their ticket to the college football playoff. 34-24.
Damn, Cole, we must have traded sheets there, brother. No, from this perspective, I mean, you always got to read your predictions, try to find paths to victory for both teams, as we all know. I mean, you definitely see a path to both teams here. Again, you can go off the field, intangible stuff like, oh, Georgia's going to be motivated. Because I do think, again, I will probably put out one of the earliest preview videos on this game, but I think most people are probably going to pick Texas. And again, that's probably going to get back to Georgia's locker room. Kirby's the master motivator. I mean, how he had the 22 team convinced people had him going 7-5. It was like pure. I mean, it was like Vladimir Putin propaganda out there, dude. Like the way he was controlling that narrative. But I'm sure they'll be motivated. But again, at the end of the day, emotional stuff that lasts for about a quarter. And then it comes down to execution, comes down to who's the better football team. I just think right now, this year, maybe at the end of the year when Georgia gets a little healthier, they will be the better team. But it's at Texas. I think Texas got more weapons. They got they get less injuries. Obviously, I know Isaiah Bond's got the ankle sprain. If I'm Texas, I come out aggressive. I go for the throat early. If I'm Georgia, I'm trying to slow as wild as it sounds, I'm trying to slow the game down and limit the possessions, stay ahead of the plan, get in third and manageables, as we've seen in college football now, guys, with these spatial offenses. If you're in 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, that's a you-know-what to prepare for. It's just anything's open. Pass, run, anything. If Georgia can stay in that, I think they'll have a shot. Can they? I don't know. I do think it's a massive question if Wilson plays at the center spot. Drew Bobo starting at center. That could be a lot of the checks, the communication from how loud I'm sure DKR is going to be on Saturday night. That will be an issue for him. I don't know. I just think Texas is the better team right now. They're better on the back end. They're better at all 3 levels. I just think Georgia's defenses has holes across the board. They have young guys that I don't think are going to be ready for this. I'm with Cole here. I got Georgia. I got Texas in a double-digit win. I went 33-23. So me and him are just only points away. Right now, I mean, you want to be like, yeah, everybody's doubting Georgia. They're going to come in there and win. It's like, yeah, that's cool. I don't think Georgia's going to come in and play bad. I'm not saying that. But you can still play good and lose football games. We see it every week. I just think Texas, to Cole's point, is the better football team right now. I just see them getting the win at home. Maybe we see a rematch in Atlanta. I mean, obviously, Georgia loses this game. We probably don't. Maybe we see a rematch in the playoffs. But Georgia's backs will officially be up against the wall. I mean, if they're not already after a loss here, I just think Texas is the better. I think they got the better quarterback, as we all know that's key in today's college football. And I think right now they have the better defense. So give me Texas at home.
A pair of double-digit outcomes from you two gentlemen. I will say this. I'm excited. Number one, the chess match between Sarkisian and Kirby Smart, 2 of the best in the business, 2 of the best minds. And I've got as much respect for Kirby and what he's built at Georgia. I know we all do, but I got as much respect for that as anybody. I mean, again, I was one of the very few to pick Georgia to go into Alabama and get the win there. And they nearly made me look very smart and pulled it off. Again, guys, I had Texas winning this game over the summer. And the way this one looks, I even more so favor to the side of Texas. To your point, Dave, you make a great point. Georgia's super banged up. Haven't been, I think, what we thought they would be in multiple different facets. Cole mentioned the lack of pass rush and their struggles on the defensive front. It's not living up to the Georgia standard. Again, I don't know that this is the week to find yourself necessarily. Georgia will be motivated. They will be fired up again. Kirby Smart, the master motivator. There's none better in the business, I think, than getting his team ready to play and rise to the occasion in a big-time matchup like this. Texas with a great opportunity themselves to, again, put their foot down and really announce. And I don't disagree right now, Cole. Again, Texas is the number 1 team in the country. They've proven that. They've earned that. I think it is a conversation of it's Texas and then who, because it feels like they've sort of separated. This is the first really big test for them, I feel like. That Michigan game was big. Don't get me wrong. But this is by far the biggest test. Georgia, I think, has been a little bit more battle tested. I think that's a fair statement to say. They've been more battle tested to this point. I think even at full strength, Georgia would have struggled to win this football game. Again, I think in Austin, the scene's going to be electric. College game day on hand. With where they sit right now from a roster standpoint, I agree with you, Dave, too. I fully expect Georgia to come out hair on fire. I'd be stunned if we haven't had another repeat of Tuscaloosa and Georgia's down 30-7 at halftime. Like, I think they will come out laser-focused, motivated. But to your point, do the Dogs have the horses to keep up in this football game? And I don't know that the storyline over the summer of, can Texas hang in the trenches? Can they hang physically with Georgia? I don't really think that's a talking point anymore at all. I think Texas will do that and then some. Guys, I hate to sound like copy-paste here and feel like I'm just echoing everything y'all said, but I think Texas wins by double digits too. I really do. I think Carson Beck is going to until I see him not do this, not saying he's going to play a terrible game, but I think there will probably be a critical mistake or two that's going to cost Georgia throughout the long haul in this football game from Carson Beck. I think Quinn Ewers, if you allow him to sit back in the pocket and work and dial things up, I think he and Steve Sarkisian, they're going to have a beautiful offensive game plan. I think Texas has got, as to Dave's point, more weapons. I think they've got the weapons on the offensive side. Georgia is a defense kind of feels like they're lost right now, again, at least to the Georgia standard. Guys, I'll take it back to the Vegas point as well. We love to talk gambling on this channel. Anytime the line swings across the number, Georgia opens as a favorite, and it's swung all the way to Texas at 3.5. You either take the team it swung to or you don't bet it at all. Somebody knows something or at least feels really good about the Longhorns, and I feel good about the Longhorns too, guys. I've got Texas winning this game. Give me Texas 38, Georgia 27. I think they get, again, that double-digit win, that statement type of game, and I think Texas is going to establish themselves as, no pun intended, the top dogs in the SEC. I think they're going to announce themselves as the standard of the conference this year, and much to the dissatisfaction of not just Georgia fans, but SEC fans alike that were maybe hoping for the demise and the downfall of the Texas Longhorns. I don't think you're getting it in 2024. I think this Texas team is for real. I think they're going to outlast Georgia, get a 38-27 win. And what'll be, I think it'll take, guys, as the best win of the year by any individual team in college football this season.
Yeah, so congratulations to Georgia, because we all just picked them. So yeah, that's fun. That's fun. I'll wait for the rap sheet. Freezing cold takes. Don't worry, I got you covered.
Hey, Carson Beck can put this image up right in his apartment, right next to his Cavender twin girlfriend, dude.
And listen, that's why it's such a big game for Carson Beck, man. It's like, if you want that respect, the stage is set. Here you go. The stage is set for Carson Beck, right? Money game for Carson Beck. Go out there, outduel Quinn Ewers. Yes, you got things going against you. The injuries on the offensive line. Who are your weapons on it? Go out and win a game, man. Go out and win a game. You want some big-time respect, go win a big-time game. That's it. So, guys, do you agree with us? Do you disagree? How do you see this one playing out when the Texas Longhorns and Georgia Bulldogs do battle on Saturday night? Guys, that's going to do all for us. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Again, make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. For Dave Shumate and Cole Thompson, I'm Chris Phillips. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, and we will catch you on the other side.